I don't really like or trust Hightower. He's always like skulking around somewhere in the background, trying to move and manipulate the different characters. And he just seems shady, right? And this is the thing, like, I've always felt like this guy is just like a creep. There's stuff going on and he's always like in the corner somewhere brooding, just like looking like a weirdo. Like, if you think of like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, he reminds me of him, but with like a different personality. Like he just feels more, he's like less lively in comparison to Littlefinger. Whereas like, Littlefinger is always wheeling and dealing and whatnot and, betraying this one and helping that one, but constantly just serving his own interests and trying to get ahead, trying to create situations that are beneficial to himself. And it's like you have much the same going on with Hightower here, where he's supposed to be serving as the king's hand, but time and time again, you see him like trying to manipulate situations for his own benefit, or he thinks things should be done in such and such way. And so it's like, you see him trying to push Viserys into that direction, but it's like in a more roundabout way. And it's like, from the very start of the series, I didn't really dig this guy. Like I felt like he used Alicent to manipulate Viserys at a vulnerable time, right? To kind of slide her in there. It's like, on a whole, this grown man talking to this young girl, his daughter's friend, about his loss and whatnot just seemed weird. And in like the midst of his grief, you had it where his advisor put his daughter in place to kind of manipulate him, right? To use her as a means to further Hightower's ends. And it's like you just see these various instances along the way where, Hightower uses Alicent to indirectly influence Viserys, right? A part of that is his end goal is to have Alicent marry Viserys and then hopefully produce a male heir, thereby putting himself in very close standing to the Iron Throne, right? Because he's advisor to Viserys, and then it's like his grandson would end up possibly one day becoming king. But you just see like these manipulations from him just at every turn. At the same time, there's this idea, of the phrase that a broken clock is still right at least twice a day, right? And Rhaenyra actually makes a pretty astute observation that, she might not be innocent, she might have done some wrong, but at the same time, Hightower is a problem, right? Because it's like, you look at it, he couldn't wait to run and tell Viserys this information that he found out about Rhaenyra, right? Why? Because it's another thing in his arsenal to use to try to convince Viserys to remove her from being in line to the throne, right? And with her pointing that out, it's like you see the gears. Viserys doesn't always catch on immediately, and he kind of gives people chances, but you see the gears start turning, and he realizes that Hightower has been manipulating him. And not just him, I think he's like the second king that Hightower has served. And when he confronts Hightower, he starts to point out some things that he's been thinking about recently with regards to his father and the manner in which his father died. And it's like, this is the thing where, if you think back to the birthday party from last episode, where seemingly every and anyone that comes into contact with these people, they want something from them. And so, how can you ever really trust anyone? If everyone that's around you is trying to manipulate you for their own gain, for their own benefit, how can you trust them to operate in your best interest? Most likely you can't, right? They'll only operate in your best interest when it aligns with their interests. And so The difference with Hightower, though, is that he's the king's hand. How can you be an advisor to the king where in so many different areas you have your own agenda and your own motivations? You're not operating in the best interest of the king or in the best interest of the kingdom. You're operating according to what's best for you. And it's like, Viserys points that out about and they had this little back and forth about the king's hand where Hightower looks at it as he's merely been, or at least he expresses it or tries to explain it as that he has merely been telling the king some harsh truths about what's going on. And that's his role as the hand, right? And Viserys, meanwhile, points out that that's not the case. Hightower has really just been operating in his own best interest. He's been manipulating Viserys, and in the past, he's manipulated other kings in his own best interest. And it actually reminded me of, if you think back to Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, where Ned was the king's hand, and he was actually a good hand to the king, where he offered him sound advice, he spoke, uncomfortable truths to him, and ultimately ended up paying with his life. And here it is that you have Hightower, who is the king's hand, but being kind of shady and working out his own side deals and trying to manipulate the king for his own benefit. And he's fortunate, really, to get off with pretty much just a slap on the wrist, right? Because Viserys doesn't, kill him or anything like that. He doesn't give him the Ned Stark treatment. And so it's I found, the juxtaposition between the two to be quite interesting. And it's it's kind of been building over the episodes, and we see it especially through this episode, through, these particular scenes. But it's actually really cool. The way how you see Hightowers, it's you set a trap for this other person, or you pass along this information thinking that you're going to be doing them harm. And it's in the meantime, you end up doing irreparable damage to yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.